Today there are interesting developments in the Sumy direction. Here, starving Russian soldiers are now killing each other at food depots, as the neglected front and deteriorating logistics situation is nearing a breaking point. As the Russian High Command has seemingly neglected this front for too long, Russians are crossing the trenches and surrendering crucial intelligence in exchange for a warm meal. After the fighting around Kursk stalled and left Russian forces exhausted, this sector appears to have slipped down the priority list. The troops left there were still expected to hold the line, but with too few deliveries, too few replacements, and too little command attention to sustain it properly. As food, ammunition, and basic supplies arrived late or in insufficient amounts, positions could still appear occupied on the map, while the soldiers inside them were increasingly left unable to defend or even survive properly. The clearest breaking point came when the shortage turned violent inside the Russian ranks. According to radio intercepts, personnel from the Russian 30th Regiment and the 810th Marine Brigade were dividing a warehouse of provisions in the Kursk region when the situation escalated into a shootout. These were not Russian soldiers fighting Ukrainians over a position, but Russian units opening fire on each other while trying to secure food for themselves, making the shortage visible not as poor morale, but as a breakdown inside the rear itself. The same pattern had already appeared during the winter in an even more primitive form. In one reported case, 4 Russian infantrymen who had been sent into the Sumy area were left without proper logistical support and began searching for food. Instead, they wandered into Ukrainian positions by accident, where fighters from the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade took them prisoner. That incident shows that the collapse in this sector had already begun shaping behavior months earlier, as these soldiers were no longer trying to hold their positions, but simply to survive the conditions imposed on them by their own side. The same logic appeared again in April, when a Belarusian volunteer serving with Russian forces tried to surrender in the Sumy region. While attempting to reach Ukrainian lines on his own, he stepped on a mine and had to be rescued after Ukrainian soldiers heard his screams. One of the Ukrainian fighters reportedly carried him for 10 kilometers through mined terrain, so he could later be exchanged for a captured Ukrainian soldier. That same breakdown soon began to show up directly on the battlefield, when Ukrainian forces moved into Andriivka with very little resistance. In most contested sectors, even small Ukrainian movements are usually detected quickly and met by Russian FPV drones or surveillance strikes before troops can move far into defensive positions. Here, however, footage from the Sumy sector showed Ukrainian troops moving through tree lines and systematically destroying dugouts with anti-tank mines step by step before any meaningful Russian response arrived. Russian FPV strikes only appeared later, after Ukrainian troops had already entered positions previously treated as Russian-held. This suggested that the Russian side was reacting to Ukrainian advances after they had already happened, rather than stopping them as they unfolded. Because drones are often Russia's fastest way to compensate for weak infantry presence on the ground, the delayed response indicated that local Russian defenses in this area were already operating more slowly and less effectively than normal. Overall, these developments show that a front can still look stable on the map, even when it is already failing in practice. On this sector, the damage becomes visible only when Ukrainian troops start moving through areas that Russian forces can no longer hold properly. That is what makes this kind of decay dangerous for Russia, because the front may look intact until Ukrainian pressure shows that parts of it are already weaker than they appear. If this continues, Ukraine is likely to find more openings here before Russian command fully understands how fragile the sector has become. If you would like to explore other key developments today that we couldn't cover in this video, make sure to visit our interactive news map. The link to our interactive map is in the description below. Thank you for watching this update, and a special thanks to everyone already following our interactive map.